today, very much like the day 22 years ago, 9/11, never goes by without me, and I'm sure all of us remembering that day. And certainly, our thoughts always go out to those that lost their lives and our first responders. So just again, it was much like a day like today. It was just a sunny day, and I was doing cards in my office, getting ready for a game, and our life changes just like that, puts it in perspective. So that coupled with the injury that we had to the Grambling student athlete, Jaquavius Richmond, had surgery at Our Lady of the Lakes. And it was obviously a very difficult injury, but the surgery was successful. It is going to be a long and difficult recovery, but we're very hopeful. And the prognosis is that obviously he'll be able to have full movement in his arms and legs. And, clearly it's a very difficult injury, but again, we're very hopeful that he's able to have a very successful outcome. So, not to be somber, but wanted to make sure that we touched upon some of those things. The game this past weekend, I think we talked about it last week. We want to play the game the right way, and playing for 4 quarters, starting fast, building momentum, and then leaving no doubt about what the outcome is, and putting away your opponent. Those are the tenets of playing 4 quarters of LSU football. We certainly didn't do that in week 1, and we wanted to make sure that was how we played the second game, regardless of who the opponent was. And we have a great deal of respect for Grambling, and we're excited about the game itself, but it really didn't matter all week from the perspective of who we were playing, rather as how we played the game. And I was pleased with the way we played the game. I was also very, very pleased with the way we handled our emotions. It got chippy out there. Our team had 2 penalties the entire game, and their discipline and their ability to maintain their pose and composure, I was very proud of them in that respect. On offense, when you score on your first 10 possessions, there's not much more you can say at any level, but great efficiency from an offensive perspective. Defensively, we had some, I would say, missed assignments early on. The tackling certainly wasn't what we needed early on. We were probably a little bit too anxious. We settled down, and certainly in the second half, played the kind of defense that we expected to, and limited Grambling to 4 first downs, I think, in 61 total yards in the second half, and that kind of dominating defense is certainly what we're looking for. Now we turn our attention to SEC play, and certainly, this is what gets everybody's attention, and not only do we play Mississippi State, but we play on the road, and playing on the road in the SEC is a great challenge. Playing an SEC opponent obviously doubles that. And then you've got to deal with all of the things that go with travel, playing at 11 a.m., cowbells, all of those things. But you do it first and foremost with starting with great preparation this week, and then your performance. If you play really well, you don't have to deal with all those distractions like any other opponent. If you're not playing very well, you're going to hear the any team's band slogans, whatever they have. So this is really about the challenge of playing on the road, handling the 11 a.m. start, playing a really well-coached football team. Zach Arnett's done a great job in his very short time of being a head coach. They're really well coached defensively. The scheme that they employ is the same as last year, which has a lot of moving parts out of their three-down defense. And again, it's a difficult defense to go against. Offensively, there's some quite a different change there. Going away from the air raid offense, going to a much more traditional offense. It is one that certainly that many see in college football. But they've got some really good players. Will Rogers is probably one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the SEC. 35 straight starts. So when you have that, you've got experience at the quarterback position. It's a really good thing. He's got 11,000 career passing yards. Jaquavius Marks, an outstanding running back. And again, another guy that, 2,100 yards rushing in games in 23. Combined, it leads the SEC in rushing through 2 games. 2 100-yard games. I misspoke already in 2023. It was a good football team. So well coached. They've got depth with numbers on defense in terms of seniors and graduate seniors. So they're coming off a really good win in overtime against Arizona. So a great challenge for our football team. And again, anytime you go on the road, I think their returners are weapons. They've got 2 outstanding return men in terms of their punt returns and kickoff returns. Both of them were All-Americans last year, so we've got a challenge in special teams. We've got a challenge in facing a veteran quarterback and outstanding running back, and certainly the challenge that the defense brings in terms of its scheme, and then going on the road to Starksville and the early start and all those things that you have to overcome. So with that, we'll open up to questions.
Brian, right up the middle. You mentioned the experience that Rogers brings. What did you see in your secondary from either practice or the game that leads you to some confidence in them?
Well, I think this is a process for us that we're making some strides. I think we're competing, for the ball. I think in some instances it's really you have to look at play after play where we're getting some competitive breakups that we hadn't had in the past, and we're getting guys that are getting seasoned, and that's really what this is about. This is a process for some guys that haven't played a lot of college football. So we like the competitiveness. This is about leveraging the football. This is about being in the right technique, and it's. Like I said, we like our guys, but this is going to be coaching and player development the entire season.
Hey, Coach, Will Rogers only threw the ball 17 times last week. So what's new about defending him and what's the same, I guess?
Well, his efficiency was high. It was 13 for 17. So, they're going to put him in really good positions to throw the football. He's an accurate thrower of the football. They want to run the football, and that's the change relative to their offensive structure. But they were explosive when they threw it, and the design now is such that they're going to play to their defense and set up the run through play action pass, take shots down the field. And I think it's going to really suit him. He's extremely accurate. He takes care of the football. He's really smart. So in the game that they played, it really allowed them to pick their spots in terms of when they needed to throw the football.
Brian in the middle. You mentioned in your open a couple times having to deal with playing at 11 a.m. A couple of games last year at 11 a.m. weren't great. Are you going to do anything differently, or how do you approach what you did last year for the early kick?
Well, not that we would do anything differently, but we do things in our preparation that matches an early start. You know, for example, in our practice schedule, we'll do some things that accelerate, you know, our team articulation. In other words, we're not going to go individual and work our way into group and then get to team. We'll go to team right away. You got to turn it on immediately. You know, we'll do some things relative to getting our senses awakened earlier on game day. You know, we're going to start with our team meal at around 7:20 in the morning. We're going to have an hour bus ride. So, you know, we'll have to handle all of those things a little bit differently than a normal routine. You know, we have a shakeout during a night game, you know, so this is going to be a totally different schedule than that they've been presented with. So we'll use some of the things we did last year, and I think that sets them up for a little bit more of an understanding of what that day is going to look like.
Coach, kind of piggybacking on what Mike asked, did you think in fall camp that it would be this challenging back there in the secondary this early in the season?
Yes. Yeah, we knew that we were playing new players back there, and the challenges were going to be in developing players with very little experience, but with talent. But talent is only one part of the equation. It's developing, you know, the consistency and doing the little things that require playing at a high level, you know, tackling, leveraging the football, being in the right leverage, whether it's inside leverage or outside leverage, you know, raking through the basket, you know, when the ball's in the air and getting it out, and which we've done, you know, much better in week 2. So I think all of those things were going to be work in progress for us. You know, we competed well for the ball in the air. I think what we'd like to see better is our technique to improve, the fundamentals, and probably the tackling.
Hey, Coach, I'm curious with Mac Markway, what did he do to not play football those final couple years of high school as he rehabbed and he was injured to put himself in a position to where he's playing a lot as a true freshman, and kind of how do you think he's looked for a couple weeks?
I think, you know, that was a personal decision that he made and his family made relative to not playing his senior year. I think he felt like he was in a really good position in understanding the nuances of what he was going to do in high school. As you know, he's a mid-year enrollee, so he got the spring football, which helped him quite a bit in understanding the offense and coming in and playing football. I think not playing again when it came to his situation had a lot to do with, you know, the 2 knee injuries more so than anything else. And I think he was in a pretty good position in terms of the knowledge base of the tight end position. So when he came in, this was much more about learning our system. I think he did a pretty good job of picking it up, and I think he's accelerated because he had that, you know, background and getting the spring. He's done a pretty good job. I mean, I think, you know, the things that he's improved in is this summer, his movement skills in space. He's a lot smoother. As you know, he's a big kid that can block in line, and he's done a nice job in terms of consistency blocking in line. And now it's refining his skills in space and catching the football.
Hey, Coach, if we could maybe just get an injury update from you, and then also you mentioned just talking about Zalance Hurd and just wanting to go back and evaluate that tape. What did you make of his debut, and is that something you guys are going to lean into going forward?
Yeah, we have 2 probables. We have probable is Mason Taylor, and probable is Omar Spates. We liked his presence in the lineup. He was assignment correct. He was physical at the point of contact, and we felt like, by and large, for a first time in a collegiate, you know, football game, he handled the emotions of the game very well. So I think we're on track to kind of similarly do what we did in the last game with him in the next game as well. Miles will still start at guard, but there's going to be a rotation there.
Ryan, you said post-game that Harold Perkins has a new position. What are y'all going to start asking him to do that's maybe different from the first game, and what was the impetus for that change?
Well, we wanted to free him up a little bit. He's got a lot of responsibilities playing inside, and we just needed to let him go and let him play fast. We felt like, with all the things that we had asked him to do, we probably slowed him down a little bit. And one of the things we have to do as coaches is know where your players are relative to, playing fast. And I think we saw in the very first play with the physicality he showed when the ball got out on the perimeter. That's not something that you want to do, is throw the ball out on the perimeter with Harold. So I think we made the right decision there. And now we'll refine what we do with him. Like, we can move him around, we can move him inside and outside and do some things that can keep him in a position to impact the game. And that's what we're trying to do.
Just your assessment of the run game and specifically getting into Caleb a little bit. Does that position allow a freshman to maybe have an impact quicker than maybe a different position? And what do you see in him and his usage going forward?
Well, I think with both backs, it was a physicality. There was runs after contact. There was, that physical presence that we were looking for. But, obviously, look, no disrespect to our opponent, but it was not an SEC opponent. And so we were able to control the line of scrimmage and do it with regularity. So I think we'd be standing here with a whole different feeling if we weren't able to control the line of scrimmage. So I think we just, we were more diversified in our running game. As you saw, we ran, probably 4 or 5 different schemes up front. But the goal here was to get off the ball. And that's what we did. We got off the ball, we ran hard, we featured 2 new backs that we hadn't seen, and we liked the results. Now let's move forward with that.
Brian, I also have a running back question. Given how well he did in his debut, and the fact that you have John Emery coming back to add to the mix this week, are you looking for a back to be that predominant guy, like maybe Logan could be, or do you want to continue to be a big mix of players there?
I think what you've seen is that, we're going to feature a guy that's feeling it and is hot, if you will, but we have enough depth that we can spell a guy. And I think that's a good thing. And, Mississippi State ran 5 backs on Saturday. They still have a featured back, but they were still able to get 4 or 5 deep in the running back situation. And I still think that we're in a position to find out who that featured player is. But I still think we can play multiple backs and still have the kind of continuity at the position that's necessary.
Coach, with this being the start of SEC play, is this kind of not a reset button, but to see how much you've improved in the last 2 weeks since the Florida State game moving forward?
Oh, yeah. No, there's no doubt. Look, we made a great deal of improvement in just the way we think. And that, to me, was the most important thing, thinking the right way about how to play for 4 quarters. Now we got to take that against an SEC opponent in terms of the technical, the tactical, all of those things now are going to be on display. When you miss a tackle in space, it's probably going to go for a touchdown, not a 35-yard, run. So that's the next challenge for us as we go into SEC play.
Hey, Coach, right in the middle. So Mississippi State has one of the top rushing attacks in the SEC, led by Jaquavius Marks. What were you guys? How were you guys prepared for their rushing attack defensively?
Well, we know what we're getting, right? I mean, this is a lot. This is a lot different than what we've seen in the past. This is clearly something that we'll be able to prep for and prepare for during the week. But Will Rogers is an outstanding quarterback as well. He's not going to, hand the ball off if there's 9 guys on the line of scrimmage. He's very capable quarterback. So you got to be defeating, blocks at the line of scrimmage. We've got to have some gap integrity, and we got to play similar to the way we played in the second half.
Yeah, Brian, could you talk about your history with Logan. I mean, how'd you get him out of New Orleans when you were at Notre Dame? What was the attraction when you found out about him?
Yeah, so, we were looking for somebody that could change the dynamics of our running back room, and we liked we just liked the way he played the game. He was somebody that had an edge to him. He was a guy that was featured in the passing game. As a running back, it was pretty evident that he had the skills necessary to play at the highest level. And he was a really good student, and those things were prerequisites in terms of the recruiting process. And then there was a connection there relative to former players that from that area that did well at Notre Dame. So, that was a good hook, if you will, to start, and then it was just a matter of convincing him to leave Louisiana, which was not very easy at all. I think it was probably my incredible personality. All right, it's a joke. It's going to be front page of every newspaper, and you just can't do it around here anymore. But no, I mean, it was. I think it was a combination of the ability to come in and play right away, because we didn't have a lot of depth at the position, and then the academics. I think he was looking for both, and I think that was probably the motivating factor.
Coach, over here on your right. From your perspective, what did Mason Smith look like on Saturday night? How do you look? How do you feel?
He was excited to play, and he played hard. But you can imagine, there was a little bit of rust, having not played in over a year. And I'm sure he's anxious to get back out there this weekend.
Brian, just purely on field, what did you kind of evaluate with Denver going back over the film there, and where do you want? What next steps as a corner do you want to see him start to take?
Yeah, I liked his. I liked his demeanor. He didn't lose his cool in some instances where, he got his helmet pulled off a couple of times. He was being held. I think he's growing, and as it was, the question was posed earlier. These young men are in a process of growing and learning, and he's learning our coverages. He's learning, he's a press corner. And we don't just play press. We play press, and we play bail, and we play off, and then we play press to off. And so there's a lot of different things that he's learning. He was just strictly a press corner. And he just pressed you, and when you came off the bus, he pressed you. And this is new to him, but he's learning, and he wants to get better at it every day. So, listen, I'm a coach. I want a captive audience. I want guys that want to be coached. And the great part about it is he wants to be coached.
Brian, I'm just curious your thoughts on the division. It's kind of had a rough weekend, and what you see in the SEC West with Alabama losing, Texas A&M losing, and what opportunities it might mean for your team.
Yeah, look, every year is a different year. We could be talking in 4 or 5 weeks about, the SEC having such a great, it's a new cycle, it was one weekend. But I will tell you, each and every week, the SEC is going to put out great football teams. And yeah, maybe it didn't have the banner weekend in terms of the big matchups, but ask anybody if they want to play an SEC team. I'll bet they'd rather try to play somebody else. Good? Thank you.